up here. Sorry, we will start in around 1 or 2 minutes. Apologies for the delay. Good morning, good afternoon. Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here with us. I think the way that you say hi in Nairobi is Jambo, right? So Jambo. But more happy. Come on, Jambo. Good. That's the spirit, because today we are going to talk about serious things, and we have to be happy to talk about serious things. So welcome to the UNEA side event. This is an official side event of UNEA on Digital Product Information System for Resilient Planet, Advancing Circularity and Transparency. I would like to give the floor to Mr. Stephen Stone, Deputy Director, Industry and Economy Division from UNEP, who will give the opening remarks. Stephen, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Reina. Thanks very much. I'm just going to talk from down here because I was saying I'm tall and it's very warm up there. It's already warm enough. But on behalf of UNEP, which is one of the co-hosts today, along with ITU, along with others, many other partners, we're very happy to welcome you here today. Very serious topic, very important topic, consumer information, digital product information systems. How does it work? How does it leverage? How does it benefit? These are all questions we want to explore with you today. I think we have a really good panel to help us tease it out. I had 3 messages I wanted to share, 3 key messages. So the first one, the first key message, let me check here. Yeah. How many of you have heard you can't manage what you don't measure? Yeah, everybody. Okay. What's in it? Information. Information is the basic tool. It's the foundation of everything for consumer choice, for producer choice, for companies, for people, for countries. And the interesting thing is we're on the verge of this digital explosion. You know, we have opportunities today that we couldn't have imagined even 10 years ago. Are we harnessing them? How are we harnessing them? How are we taking this forward? And that's why the conversation today is so interesting. I think because we actually have practitioners, and you who are here in the audience as well, can help us answer that question. How do we harness the opportunities that digital innovation has opened for horizontality in terms of consumer choice, informed consumer choice, more responsible production? And one of the key questions for me always is, how do you get the benefits of more responsible production to the producers themselves? So there's lots of benefits, traceability, transparency in value chains. We'll hear about all of these different things. I should say UNEP and One Planet Network have been busy at this for some time with many partners, and I'm meeting them here today as well. One is called CODES. Have you heard of CODES before? Any of you? Yeah, okay, CODES. Yeah, CODES is the Coalition for Digital Environmental Sustainability. And they also launched something called Digitalization for Circular Economy. Digitalization for Circular Economy, D4CE. So with a lot of different partners, and here I'll just mention them quickly, Reina and colleagues, WBCSD, World Business Council Sustainable Development, ITU, who's here with us today, UNIDO, the Wuppertal Institute, as well as European Commission and others. So this is a journey that we're on, and also, let's see from here from Germany. This is a journey that we are all on. So key message number one, the information is foundational, there's huge opportunities. Key message number two, if we can make sense of it, we're lost. Estamos perdidos, I would say in Spanish. So we need to figure it out, and that's where harmonization comes in. That's where standardization comes in. The ISO comes in. I see one of our colleagues now working at the ISO, because there are a lot of initiatives underway in the European Union, in China, in different countries to try and bring digital information to consumers and from producers. But if they can't talk to each other, it's going to be chaos. The search costs will be even higher for consumers. And we're getting there. You see things like an app. How many have heard of this different app? I think it has a carrot. It's called Kafu, or no, not ringing a bell. I'd have to open my phone to look at it. My children use it. They scan a product and it tells them what's the toxicity footprint of the different product. It's very interesting. But if they took it to South America, would it work? I don't know. Or China. So interoperability, that's the second key message, is very, very important. And I think it goes without saying the United Nations has a key role to play there. So ITU, really happy you're on board because you make things interoperable and you got the internet running and so on. And all of our partners have something to offer there. So first message, information critical, digital information critical. Second, information has to talk to each other. And third is we're on the verge of unlocking huge opportunities for human health, for countries, for producers. And here I think about earlier advances. You know, there's some really basic things that are out there, and you probably all know about them, but like coffee, right? We know coffee from the Blue Mountains of Jamaica is good, it's quality. Or we know cocoa from Ecuador, Variedad Nacional, is really good. Wines in France. So how do you actually bring that traceability of origin, of quality, back to the producers so they have an incentive to increase the quality, to produce in a way that's sustainable? And then how do you track that? That's the really interesting question. So we can unlock a lot of benefits and all the goals, Kunming, Biodiversity Framework, the Global Framework on Chemicals, all the different agreements. But for me, it's really about unlocking the benefits for individuals and for consumers and for producers, particularly the producers who currently don't get a lot of value addition price from what they're producing yet. But they can, and they will. Let me end my opening remarks by thanking all of you for coming today, and especially our key strategic partners, ITU, UNIDO, Wuppertal Institute, WBCSD. I'm not sure if you're here today, but I hope you're with us in spirit. And all who are working on this very important journey to make digital information work for all of us. Thank you very much, Reina.
Thank you so much, Stephen, for this inspiring speech, also for giving us very concrete talking points and ideas of what we are going to see today. Now we are going to play a video with opening remarks from Mr. Bilal Jamoussi, Deputy Director of the Telecommunications Standardization Sector, that unfortunately he couldn't be here, but he sent us a message. Could you please play the video?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished speakers, member states, and friends. First of all, I'd like to sincerely thank UNEP and the One Planet Network for co-organizing this important side event with ITU. It's truly a privilege for us to partner with you during UNEA 7 to advance the discussions on digital product information systems, or DPIS. At ITU, digital product information systems, including digital product passport, are central to our work on environmental sustainability, circular economy, and e-waste management. Digital tools such as DPIS can transform the way we manage resources by making information on product materials, repairability, and recyclability accessible across value chains. Just a few weeks ago, we were at COP30, where the Belém package called for the concrete implementation of climate actions. Standards are key to this implementation, and they also play a vital role in supporting UNEA resolutions on sustainable consumption and production, and on the sound management of chemicals and waste. And that's why ITU is proud to be a founding partner of the Digitalization and Circular Economy, D4CE, Impact Initiative, together with UNEP, the One World Planet Network, UNIDO, the Wuppertal Institute, and the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. Over the past 2 years, this collaboration has made great progress in shaping a global TPIS framework, one that promotes interoperability, data harmonization, inclusiveness, and the use of international standards to enable circular and transparent value chain. In ITU, our standards on digital product passport are being jointly developed with the European Telecommunications Standardization Institute, or ETSI. This collaboration strengthens our joint effort to avoid market fragmentation and ensure that these standards can be implemented not only in Europe, but also globally. A key strength for this process is that our standards are developed collaboratively, bringing together member states, industry, academia, and key stakeholders. Furthermore, we're also collaborating with other UN agencies and organizations such as UNECE on initiatives like the UN Transparency Protocol, which represents another important building block for digital product information systems. Today's session is an excellent opportunity to reflect on these achievements and identify how we can work together to scale these efforts globally. I would like to encourage all participants to join our ongoing work at ITU and within the D4CE community. Let us support you on your journey towards digitalization and circular economy, and together make TPIS a reality across all sectors. I regret that I cannot be with you in Nairobi today, but I wish you all a very productive discussion and an excellent session. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And now you will be with me, that I have the privilege and the honor that I will be representing the D4CE and explain you what we have been doing so far these 2 years since the initiative started, and also what we are doing as ITU on digital product passport. So I have a presentation, if you could please put the presentation. How many of you know, before I start, how many of you know about digital product information system or digital product passport here? Okay, you don't count because you are speakers, but good, you know it. You do count, sorry, that was not very polite. But from there, I just saw like two hands raised. So why digital product passport are important? Digital product information system. Mainstreaming sustainability and circular economy in an age of rising resource use. So there is a projection by 2060, and we took this from the International Resource Pattern, that resource use is projected to grow by 60%. Over 90% of consumers globally express an interest in healthy and sustainable products, and digitalization will become key to systematizing, integrating, and democratizing environmental data. So why digital product information systems are important? Because the definition of digital product information system are digital platforms that enable the exchange of sustainability and circularity data across different stages of product life cycle. And the aim is that each actor of the value chain will have different permission to get access to the data. Not everyone will have the same access to data. But what data will they have access? This is the discussion that is going on, and that's the role that we are playing in the digitalization for circular economy. What are the benefits? For example, for consumers, transparency, support in making sustainable choices, support eco-labeling, and build trust and customer protection. For example, how many of you will change your buying decision if you know the products of a smartphone, for example, where they come from? Will that change your buying decision? Yes? Just 2 people. 3, 4, okay, 5. Even if it's more expensive when it's more sustainable? That's a tricky question, right? But I know that many of us, there is more conscious as well about what we are doing to the environment. So the idea is that digital product information system or digital product passport can also help us to make better decisions. Or also knowing, in the case of electronics, maybe one of the characters that this is still to be discussed, that a digital product information system could tell me, where do I return this phone? That we don't know it yet, right? It's very difficult information to get. Or where do I repair? Or where does the screen comes? Which one should I buy for the person that is repairing it? Which one should they buy it, which is the category, etc. So this is what a digital product information system or digital product passport will allow. For businesses, compliance, reduced cost, more efficient production and value creation opportunities, and for government, helps implement effective circular economy and environmental companies' compliance information. The initiative Digitalization for Circular Economy, as you heard from Steve and also from Bilal, is led by UNEP and One Planet Network, together with ITU, the Wuppertal Institute, WBCST. The European Commission acts as an advisor, and there are also other partners that are heavily involved in this initiative. Also, this initiative is an impact initiative of codes that today we are going to hear more about codes in our panel discussion that we have Marcel with us, that he will also explain how what codes is doing. And what is our mission? Accelerate the implementation of digital product information system, enabling sustainability and circular economy transitions in a resource-constrained world. One important aspect to mention is that digital product passport, the first time, maybe some of you have heard it from Europe, because Europe is leading this discussion. But how the work also, not of the initiative, but also in ITU came, we said, okay, as UN, we cannot leave the discussion only at the European level. We need to have a digital product passport, a digital product information system that is inclusive, that can have the voices of all the regions, because when it's implemented in Europe, it will affect everyone. And also, why are we working in a global framework? Because if each country will have a digital product information system, imagine the mess. Because we need that all this, Stephen was talking today, is interoperable. They communicate to each other. So that's why this is the aim of this initiative. We want to ensure sustainability and circularity are at the heart of the DPIS. DPIS is a tool. Of course, there is, we cannot undermine that it is important for products that they are designed thinking about circularity, that they have circular design. But this tool will allow this because will allow us to have the information of the product. What we have done over the last years, we have published, well, the initiative has two groups, let's say. One is the Intervention Lab for Business Models and the Intervention Lab for Global Digital Standards. For a business model, there are two reports that have been published, one on digitalization of circular business model, and the first one, that was when the initiative started, was harnessing digital technologies for circular economy, the importance of digitalization for circular economy. And for the global digital standards, there is a blueprint for the global digital product information system, and this blueprint provides an overview of the existing initiatives that are working on digital product passport, also provide the views of several consultations that we did at the regional level, especially we did with ITU, we work with the regional groups in Africa, in Latin America, and in Europe, where what we found and our main goal was to raise awareness because there is a lot of people that they don't know what the digital product passport is, what will be the benefit, and how it can help. Sorry, Adriana. Apologies that I got distracted. So that's what we did with this regional consultation, and what we found is that also the people that are working, for example, on e-waste in different countries, they didn't know about it. They didn't know how it could affect, because it's not just going to affect me as the Ministry of ICT or the Ministry of Environment. It's also going to affect the Ministry of Trade. It's also going to affect the Ministry of Transport, because everyone will have a role to play. So that's why these consultations were very important, and the blueprint is the first step of achieving this global framework for digital product information system. As well, there is a work on textile that has been done by the colleagues from UNIDO, that they did an assessment, a DPP assessment textile in the Global South. So these are the reports that are available on the D4CE website that you can take a look on them. Then, what is our next step? Our next step is to build the global framework for DPIS based on the blueprint, and what are the key principles? Embedded sustainability and circularity, defining data categories, defining fundamentals, including technical architecture, governance, financial mechanism, and ensuring equity and inclusion, developing an inclusive process. So, what will be the information that, oh, I'm sorry, I am a bit behind with the slides. These are the categories, the 7 proposed data categories that we would like to start. We are discussing it because there are different regional consultations happening that we would like the global framework to have. General product information, for example, technical specifications, component information, but also the material and the composition of these products, instruction and life cycle information, life cycle monitoring, environmental life cycle assessment, climate change, toxicity and ecotoxicity, land use, water consumption and scarcity, fine particulate matter impact. So these are some of the aspects that we see that this component should have. Also, the social life cycle assessment, the worker, the local community, value chain actors, consumers, society, compliance with regulations, standards. There are a lot of standards that exist, and many of these standards can also because when you will going to ask, okay, what is the footprint of that product, you will measure it by the existing standard. So the digital product passport will have reference to that standard, and that's the one that will have the calculation. Today in the morning, I was in an event that we were talking about the environmental data and the importance of the harmonization of the data. Because if anyone collect the data as they want, we have different information, and that is not what we want. So digital product passport will help also with this journey. The circular art strategies is also another data categories that is proposed. The next slide shows a picture of a regional consultation, the first one that was in Latin America, in Brazil this year. But we have had 10 consultations, involved 300 experts, total of 86 countries represented for the blueprint. And we are going to have a consultation in Africa, in Guinea Equatorial, in February, that you are invited to join. It will be also jointly with the regional group of ITU. We'll have expert consultation, critical minerals with the UNEP national focal points. Now, allow me to switch a bit and tell you how we are collaborating with ITU. So, ITU, for those that don't know, we are the specialized agency of digital technologies at the UN system. But we are also a standard development organization, the same as are our colleagues from ISO that are here today and IEC. So we are recognized by WTO as International Standard Development Organization. And we have a study group that is dedicated to work on environment, circular economy, and environmental efficiency. What we have done so far, we have produced 2 standards. One standard is on the digital product passport opportunities for the ICT sector. What will be the benefits that this will bring to the ICT sector, and digital product passport information on sustainability and circularity. These standards provide some information that the digital product passport could contain. This work has been developed, as it was mentioned by Bilal, together with ETSI, that is the European Telecommunication Standardization Institute, and these are joint developed standards. They are the same in both, technically aligned. What is inside of ITU-TL 1070? Well, we have the desirable principles: digitalization, data findability, usefulness, accuracy, inclusivity. As you see, this is very much related to what we are doing in DPIS with the global framework. Data quality properties, accessibility, free access to relevant information, persistency, authenticity, and some examples of what kind of the data categories that should contain. What is inside of L1071? We have a prototype as well, and we also mention what it has been done by the European Commission in the Digital Product Passport, but also by the colleagues from UNEP with the Transparency Protocol, that is a business-to-business information system. What we are doing now, we are also working on ongoing work on consumer-oriented environmental information and the reverse value chain. What kind of information will be possible for consumers to have? What will be ideally? And with this, we are also working with some students from university that are doing some research work to understand what kind of information will a consumer would like to do. There are other initiatives also you will hear today in the panel from Consumer International that they launched a pilot in Germany for smartphones for the consumers to see what kind of information they would like to see in the digital product passport. There is a new ongoing work, and this is more on the architecture of the system, because what we are doing in the digitalization for circular economy is what are the data categories, but also there is the importance of how we build the architecture, the infrastructure of the system. So this is new work that started also in other study groups in ITU, that they are working on the requirements and system architecture of digital product passport for ICT goods. As an initiative, what we are doing as well, and now let me go back to the Digitalization for Circular Economy initiative, we are working on pilot projects. And pilot projects are very important for us because it allows us to test what we think, what are the data categories that we are requesting and see if it works. So there are pilot projects, the textile sector, pilot projects in Argentina, and pilot program in India, Indonesia, and Africa. And with ITU, there is the development of the global framework will be standardized in ITU, but with a focus more for the ICT goods. And this is a work that is being led by UNEP and One Planet Network. Additionally, there is a pilot project by the Basel Convention Secretariat and Uruguay on the traceability system for the management and use of lead-acid batteries. There are two phases. One is the diagnosis and the project design, and it will be starting next year. And the second phase is the development and execution of the pilot project. Develop the traceability system, including DPP with selected companies, implement pilot project, and design a plan to replicate the system. And this we are also doing in the framework of the D4CE. So now, that what will be the potential global benefits, as we have mentioned also from Stephen. They can be linked and provide information on compliance with regulations and standards that can be digital verified. It benefits all stakeholders, harmonized global system for product information, and discussions, consensus, standardization, and legislative processes can enable agreements to develop concrete and specific specifications. So thank you so much for your attention, and now I will give the floor to the panel discussion.
Thanks so much. Okay. Excellent, thank you. So I think with Bilal, Stephen, and Reina, we have now a big overview on what are we doing here. So we heard a lot that mainly the objective is how can we develop a global framework for digital product information system that has to have key magic ingredients. We heard harmonization, interoperability, comparability, and it has to be inclusive. We don't want this to be only Western thing. We want to engage the global South and the global North and really make a consensus around that. So I have the honor to be the moderator of a very interesting panel. We have excellent people who have a lot of expertise, and I'm very happy to say that we are also working already with them and with a partnership in developing this. So with this, please allow me to invite to the stage Patrick Child. He is the Deputy Director of DG Environment at the European Commission. So please join us. Marcel Dosch, he's the Senior Researcher at the President's Office of the German Environment Agency, better known as the UBA. And he is also the lead and coordinator of CODES. You remember Stephen mentioned CODES, the Coalition of Digital Environmental Sustainability, CODES. And let me also invite Pars Larsson, who is the co-chair at the International Chamber of Commerce, leading the working group on circular economy. He's also a member of UNEP Global Partnerships on Nutrient Management. And last but not least, let me also invite Rafael Ponte. He's a specialist on consumer information. He's part of Consumers International, who is a partner and a co-lead of OPN program on Consumers International. So welcome to all of you, and I'm very happy to be here. Help me to join them. So now I will ask you. Thank you. So, Patrick, I will start with you, and I will actually ask the three of you a the same question. We would like to hear from you in a 3-minute intervention, how is your institution working on digital product information systems, and how do you think this information, this tool, will help us to address the environmental challenges? Thank you.
Well, firstly, thank you very much for inviting me. Happy to be here. Ah, wonderful. I think it is, very important that we have this opportunity to discuss the sort of global opportunities that digital product passports can offer. I mean, the circular economy, and in particular, what we can do to transition the sort of niche opportunities of the circular economy, which are increasingly developing across the world and a lot also in the European Union, into sort of mainstream circular economic models, is a key challenge that we are addressing. We will be presenting next year a new EU Circular Economy Act, building on what we already have, and which is particularly relevant for the discussion today, our regulation for eco-design for sustainable products, and before that our batteries regulation, both of which are based very centrally on the existence of digital product passports as the way of providing all users and throughout the value chains with the information that is needed in order to facilitate the recycling, reuse, and circular management of materials. And I think it's these are challenges that are very central to the whole triple planetary crisis that we're facing. And the circular economy is, I think, the sort of dimension of the climate and decarbonization agenda that has not yet been fully exploited. And that's why we need to develop the tools in order to make that work, and digital product passports are a central part of that. So what we're doing is that we are starting to roll out digital passports. The first will be in the battery sector. Already by 2027, the operational requirements of our batteries regulation for the larger industrial batteries will kick in, and we will then have a pilot experience to draw on as we subsequently roll out the circular economy models in the other sectors that are covered by our sustainable products regulation. And so, I mean, the work that we can do together with UNEP and with the international community to make sure that the standards that we are developing and the models that we are piloting at a European level are well calibrated and well aligned on what is happening in other parts of the world. So, thank you.
Thank you so much, Patrick. And I really want to appreciate the leadership of the EU, this project. And this conversation started with the championship that you have had in developing this, and also the request of really bringing other voices, and in particular, as you mentioned at the end, the Global South, and to learn from that experience. So let me now move to you, Pars.
Yes, thank you so much. Besides my positions at the International Chamber of Commerce and UNEP, I'm also working for the private sector in a recycling company. And current way of producing things is a take, make, dispose. And in practical terms, it means that a company comes to us with what they call waste and say, please take care of this, I don't want to see it anymore, and do whatever you want with it. And we don't have a clue what it contains. And that's one of the big challenges, but also our big business possibility in current business. What's happening if you can understand what the content are, then suddenly the value of the waste will be higher. Fortunately for me, as a waste management company, I will probably not get the stuff in the future if I don't find models how I can also develop them into new products or new raw materials. So, but based on that is like the introduction. And I can give a very practical example when it comes to batteries. We know that the big battery producers, they have understood that if they can also monitor during the lifetime, during the process, when, for example, a tractor or a lorry are used, they can monitor the quality of the battery. And by that, they can also do the right activities so the battery will also last longer, and they can also understand what the battery should be used going forward. We know that many battery recyclers have started to invest, but they have discovered, due to that the digitalization and the traceability has increased, they discovered that batteries are not being dismantled that much anymore. And this really will support in the long term what we want with the triple planetary crisis. We will reduce the unhealthy consumption of take, make, dispose, and we're able to use them in a better way. We'll also understand more what the content are when it comes to chemicals, and make sure that we doesn't use, in this case, the wrong methods. But it's very important that from my International Chamber of Commerce perspective, we say that standards are key, and if you can really implement it on a global level, it's much easier for our companies to invest and have the long-term perspective, and then we can be a driver of this transformation. I'll stop there.
Thank you so much. And you say something very important. If we don't know what the product has, how can we manage it? How can we ensure that can be recyclable or disposed in a sustainable way? And it's what Stephen was saying at the beginning. We cannot manage what we cannot measure. So
it will be downgraded, and we're losing a lot of economy. Some companies will benefit, like waste management companies, but the whole society will lose money.
Environmental benefits will be lost, and competitiveness, I have to say as well. So Marcel, let me move to you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me and for also mentioning code so often. That is a pleasure. So many co-contributors and co-champions of our initiative here. Let me start in this first round with a little bit of a bigger picture. So I also said yesterday in another occasion that it's important for all these issues around digital and sustainability really understand and acknowledge that these two transformations, not only transitions, but transformations, sustainability and digital, are the two big, grand, systemic transformations of our time, of this century probably, which will reconfigure everything, basically, how we produce, how we consume, how we live our lives as a world society, how we can interact and cooperate, and also how we manage the interrelation of us, the people, and to our planet. So I think this is important to start with, and the 2030 agenda back in 2015 did not really anticipate this digital dimension of opportunities and risks at all, basically. So this was one of the starting points also for CODES, the Coalition for Digital Environmental Sustainability, to take this mandate and to work more closer on this alignment of these two megatrends and mega transformations. The Global Digital Compact is one of the outcomes and processes that are here very relevant as a new normative guidance to organize in the UN system and beyond with all stakeholders on this alignment even further, the digital transformation and the 2030 agenda. But I mean, we were, after many stakeholder consultations 4 years ago, pretty clear with 3 overarching messages, and we work a lot with them. It's first, we need to invest in this alignment in our institutions, in our processes, in our common standard settings, to build the capacities and the competencies in our daily works, in our institutions, in research and policy, in bureaucracies, to connect those two issue areas that are often siloed and that you really need to look in an aligned, in a combined, in a cooperative manner. And this is really capacity building at its best, if you will, and it's needed often. Second is to make the whole thing sustainable. So digitalization itself must be sustainable. We have many discussions here around the life cycle of it, of the materiality of the digital age, the energy demands, water demands, and everything else, and the other social and sustainability impacts, of course, as well. And third, to look closely what kind of innovations we need. What are really meaningful issue areas where we need to invest in and scale and not follow the sheer buzzword bingo around every other tool and technological buzzword, but to look closely where it's needed and where we should scale and invest in as a global community to really provide a positive impact for our sustainability agenda. And here, to answer your question, I think circularity is, of course, one of the key grand challenges of the sustainability transformation. We know that for long. I think we are much better situated with regards to decarbonization. We are less prepared and less well situated with regard to organizing, thinking through, really visualizing and making it in practicable, concrete steps in 2 years, in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years, in 30 years, how to realize a circular economy, circular societies at a global scale. So this is a key task, and I think the digital product passports and digital product information systems as such really are one of these fields where it's really extremely important to work on, because they are one of the rare cases that are not only one of the many few use cases you see that are also important to support this challenge, addressing this challenge, and are not only the big narratives that I started with as well today, but really are one of these, like DPI, let's say, one of these key enablers to organize and drive positive change with digital means towards our sustainability agenda.
Excellent. Thank you, Marcel. I think it's very important on how can we use digitalization as a driver for innovation and circularity and not the other way around. So, and I want to highlight, as Reina said, D4G, digitalization for circular economy, is a key working group of codes, and that's very important also, as you were saying, connecting the dots and building synergies. We are not duplicating agenda. The effort that we are doing here is contributing to codes, and codes is also providing inputs to that. So that's, I want to highlight that as well. So last but not least, Rafael. So how are we doing that? And how are you doing digital product information systems?
Thank you very much for the invitation to UNEP and to the One Planet Network. We indeed are advancing not only advocacy for consumers as a consumer advocacy group and as an umbrella organization for different members in different countries, but also we are advancing data. We have conducted a survey with 1,000 consumers in Germany, and I know that's Global North. We're not talking about how this is going on Global South, but this is something I want to share perhaps a bit more later. I want to go back to what Reina mentioned in her presentation about this over 90% of consumers support a shift towards green economy, towards circular economy models. And this is actually something that we, with GloveScan, conducted a couple of years ago in 2023. Over 30,000 consumers were part of this survey in 30 countries. So the fact is there that consumers do want to advance and do want to see progress and want to obtain these options. They want this kind of availability. Of course, there are other considerations to have: affordability, accessibility, and not universal solutions for everyone, because we have different cultural contexts and needs. But even though we have seen some private sector companies, some governments advancing, for example, public procurement, sustainable public procurement, and consumer information, there is still lack of transparency in product sustainability information, services information as well. There's no credibility, unfortunately, so there is still some work to do there. I'm going to wear the hat of Consumer Information Program, call it, to say that we welcome the initiative of DPIS since the beginning, because since 2017, we've been advocating for product sustainability information. And for that, we created a flagship resource, which is available for practitioners, policymakers, companies. It's the guidelines for providing product sustainability information. And it's a set of 10 principles that just set the minimum requirement for product sustainability information, as well as aspirational principles. I'm talking about reliability, clarity, transparency, accessibility, and if I'm not mistaken, I said clarity. But these guidelines have been already adopted by consumer protection agencies. For example, in Peru, the Consumer Protection Agency has adopted these guidelines and made a guideline for environmental advertisement. So they are also enforcing this kind of guidelines and resources that we have developed. And the DPIS is actually implementing these guidelines. They are embedding the guidelines into interoperable data. So what we see is that DPIS can collect, can exchange, and leverage product sustainability information into circular thinking, into circular models. This is not easy to make because you have to think about different stakeholders, right? You have to think about consumers, you have to think about policymakers, you have to think about producers as well. But we are seeing that in this context, the guidelines are being complemented by DPAS. It's a huge step forward because we're all pointing at achieving or at least advancing SDG 12, responsible consumption and production, which is one of the hardest SDGs to track because there's a lack of interoperable data. So we see that DPAS is actually a step forward into that direction. And we want to see more, and we've been involved in advancing and contributing to the development of this initiative. So perhaps in my next intervention, I can give a bit more of what consumers think about DPPs when they are facing these tools. And thank you.
Thank you, Rafael. So let me come back to Patrick. So you mentioned, very important, the EU Circular Economy Act, the new regulation for eco-design, and also the digital product passport. So what are those lessons learned, key messages that you can offer us in order to scale up the digital product information systems?
No, well, thanks. And you know, I'm here, of course, to hear from others of the different experiences. But from our first experience with developing the digital product passport, 3 or 4 points. I mean, firstly, start small and build on what exists. So, you know, there is high expectations and a very sort of lively debate about the potential for digital product passports. But you know, let's not bite off more than we can chew. You know, don't run before we can walk. And I think that that's an important. So, you know, start with clear, achievable scope. Use existing systems and standards where we can. The second is engage with stakeholders from the very beginning. I mean, this is a general, I think, message about any sort of digital sort of solution, but you know, here more than other cases, really working with consumers, manufacturers, recyclers, repairers, public authorities, get everyone on board to build a shared understanding. Even if this takes a bit more time, it is vital in the end for the acceptance of the final product. Third thing, keep separate the 2 dimensions that are the technical system, that is, you know, the architecture, the interoperability, functioning, and standards, and the data content. And the data content is, you know, something which, you know, the specific information which you need for each product category. And then this, you know, I think avoids mixing too much different technologies with the sector-specific needs. And what we're experiencing is that you really do need to take account of the differences between different sectors. You're not going to find the same solutions for an industrial battery as you are for textiles, for example. And then the fourth thing, and really central to the discussion here, is, you know, really work on interoperability across global supply chains. That systems need to allow information to move across multiple product groups through global value chains. And it's, you know, not going to be productive if you only have a European solution, if, you know, a lot of the components or elements coming into your products are coming from other parts of the world and you don't have the relevant data coming in from that. So I think those are the 4 things that I mentioned. Start small, engage stakeholders, keep separate the technical and the data, and think about global supply chains.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Very good 4 key messages. And Reina, I think we are following some of them. And I really like what you say, keep separating the technical system with the data. Let me move to Marcel, because I know, Marcel, you've been also following the current negotiations here in UNEA on the resolution on artificial intelligence. Interoperability has been one of the issues that is being discussed a lot. So based on these lessons learned that Patrick is offering, and also on these 2 weeks discussions, what do you think are the key challenges that we have in really uptaking the DPIs?
Yeah, now that you mentioned it, I think, of course, I mean, I'm not a technologist in a strict sense. I'm aware of the very practical challenges, of course, of building the right standards, of providing the data architecture, the technology architecture. And indeed, we had also in the negotiations, I will not talk about it in depth, recurring issues about, dealing with these terminologies. They are, I mean, it's fully understandable that they are new to some and that they also create fear. And I think this is totally plausible. Interoperability was one of them. I mean, it's of course for people not engaged in these discourses, probably nothing they ever cared about or thought about, even though it's a very technical and in a sense non-political term. But I think it shows well how many different perceptions, fears, horror, hype is around, hopes is around this issue, and that you really have to look into these different perceptions of the challenge, what it can bring and what it cannot bring. I can just maybe share a couple of perspectives from my work also in Germany at the Environment Agency. We work with industry stakeholders on these issues as well. And I tried to organize an in-house-wide exchange group, working group on DPPs, just to take a step in this direction to analyze who in our agency, with the many hundreds of people, researchers, bureaucrats, are working on these issues from different angles, right? And to organize a common discourse. And I think the result was stunning in a way. I identified around, let's say, 4 typical groups. We had very few people who are the real experts on this terminology, digital product passport, and the specific political processes around it. So they are the key focal points for this issue. They deal with the European Commission. They are closely aligned with the actual step-by-step approach the European Union takes, which, I mean, Patrick highlighted it, always highlight that it's a very pragmatic step-by-step approach and really, in my feeling, try to counter these maybe very ambitious visions around traceability, transparency, and global transparent value chains in that regard. So we had a few of these colleagues. Second, very few colleagues who tried to deal with the legal issues around all these topics. Reina also showed us the 7 categories and the circle. I mean, there are optionally, but I mean, theoretically many different fields involved, right? And a lot of things to clarify. Then the largest group were those colleagues from the different thematic areas, dealing, let's say, with CBAM, the carbon border adjustment mechanism, an idea of the European Union, right, to implement. Or let's say with the shelves of small boats, because they learned that digital product passports will probably be an issue for them in the next years, and who never actually heard about digital product passports or anything around it. And I think the biggest group were colleagues that were just very enthusiastic about the vision behind it. So sustainability experts, environmental experts of different character who just were carried away with this vision of finally having full transparency when you look at products, to make informed decisions for consumers, to have every sustainability aspect showcased in the digital product passport or in whatever kind of tool you have in the end. And this really drove the debate. So my point would be, there are many technical difficulties, we heard about them. There are many issues, I think, around building the capabilities and clarifying questions of ownership, also with industry stakeholders. I mean, they are really concerned. What kind of data do the next station, so to say, can access, right? So action, ownership. But the biggest fundamental issue, I think, is dealing with the expectations, clarifying what are non-substantial fears, also when you look at it globally, of course, and also what are over-ambitious hopes maybe for the moment. I mean, the reality is a very lean and subtle one, right? To take a very pragmatic step-by-step approach around different product categories. So it's a long way to go. And I think clarifying this discourse, taking a pragmatic stance, while not neglecting the vision behind it, of course, is important.
Thank you, and I like what you say, the vision, where we want to go, understanding what could be the threats, the expectations. And I think you reinforce what Patrick was saying, is the shared understanding, no? That I think step by step, let's start with where we see there is consensus, so shared understanding. So, Per, I want to go back to you with the private sector. You already talked about that. And now, if we manage to scale up the digital product information systems or DPPs, how do you think they will help private sector in driving more innovation and competitiveness for the environment?
Yes, and I believe that's very important, and I build on this, what Patrick ended with also with the global value chains. We are really proved to reform on a multilateral level several of the different areas within trade, within custom, also in waste transport, or more addressing in this case the World Customs Organization or WTO, or in this case also the Basel Convention. And I would try to be very practical and say, well, if we focus on plastics, we know we have a global plastic crisis where plastics end up in everywhere, where they shouldn't end up. So can we increase the value of the plastics if we know the content of the product? Yes, probably. And if we do that, then suddenly that has a value, and we can start trade with it internationally. I know that EU, for example, now banning export of plastics from Europe, but allowing import. And of course, the more information we have about plastics, the more we can also, of the business perspective, then we can develop innovations that be able then to, on a higher level, reuse or remanufacture and not incinerate it or not landfill it. So I think it's very important. But I think that we start with maybe the HS codes, the harmonized codes at the World Customs Organization, should recognize the difference between, in this case, virgin and recycled plastics. And if we add on the digital dimension, suddenly you can also add on that, and then you have much more information already in the custom. And then suddenly you can control many of the trade, or what is allowed to be trade, or support, in this case, circular products out of a custom perspective. So I think that is one way. When it comes to the Basel Convention, that is also a blocker for circular economy. If we know the content of the material, then we can make exceptions that we can see not only the content, but also where it's been shipped. And that creates a possibility, because if we're going to create and make it economical feasible, we need to set up processes that are large scale. And then suddenly maybe waste from one country is not enough. And then if you then set up a production facility outside of Europe, suddenly you have a big problem, because then you need to meet the Basel Conventions, and then suddenly you're totally blocked. So again, I think it's very important to do this overview and see what the possibilities that this initiative, this digitalization, has to also reform these very important mechanisms that we already have.
Thank you. And again, connecting the agendas and the different issues so that, yeah. Okay, I'm gonna go to Rafael, and then we will open the floor for questions and from the audience. So, Rafael, what I would like to hear from you now, also from Consumers International, is what are the key messages that from your organization you have that we need to consider for the digital product information systems?
Mm-hmm. I think I can back up these messages also with the data that we have collected. This is kind of a pre-launch because we are working on the report. So let me share the key findings, and then let me build upon them on some suggestions, on some ways of actually avoiding the risk of low adoption. Because if consumers are going to be the end users, we need to make sure that they are going to use this tool. So in our findings, which as I mentioned before, it was a survey conducted with 1,000 consumers in Germany. We used 5 use cases using a mock-up, a DPP mock-up, on smartphones, because we thought this is the kind of electronics that many consumers have at hand. And these 5 use cases were purchase decision, resale, repair, recycling and disposal, and also lifespan of a product and software support. we found one of the main findings is that only 17% of this pool of consumers knew about DPP up to the date of that survey. So that happened across September, October. So there's still a lot of work to do if these tools, when this tool is released, for consumer adoption of these kind of tools. Another of the insights that we found, and let me go back to my notes so I don't forget about this, is that we didn't identify a strong objection or rejection to the tool. Actually, the skeptics in the survey, in the pool of participants, still consider that DPP was a useful tool. So adoption is still a possibility. We found that some of the DPP functionalities that provide concrete action-oriented guidance have the highest perceived impact. That means that DPPs are going to be most effective in a life cycle perspective that connects purchase, end-of-life options, software support. In the case of electronics, that's something that is part of its programming, and the use, of course, of the object itself. So, building on this, talking with experts, doing interviews with them, participating of consultations as well on digital product passports, it's important for DPIS as well as other DPP initiatives to consider consumers as in two roles, as end users, through online forums, to networks, but also through their advocacy groups, because reaching out to consumers, to citizens, it's going to be quite a challenge. But it's easier to engage consumer advocacy groups now, because they can bridge this gap between the disinformation that now exists about this tool. Yes. No, I think it's easier to answer the questions because, yeah, we're more interactive.
No, excellent. And you made a very good point, because I want to say when we started this initiative, and I don't know, Patrick, if that was in the EU, some of our colleagues were saying, but you know, digital product passport at the end of the day is for producers, or for retailers, or for business to business. And I think Rafael with the Consumers International were saying, how can we also ensure that there is an interface with the end user, that is the consumer? How can we make them more easy to understand so that they can be then practical and guide or reorient consumption? So thank you for highlighting that and showing that only 17% of the audience in your survey knew about this. So we want to hear from you, so let me now invite you to ask any question you might have to our super experts. I see one hand, maybe a second one. So, yeah, 3 hands. So what we will do, we take 3-4 questions, and then I will turn to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. My name is Cohen, and I come from on the behalf of the Children and Youth Major Group to this UNEA. And thanks very much for this very timely panel session. I have 2 questions for you, and I'd love to hear from any of you across these 2 questions. One is I would like to go back on the interoperability, actually, the question Adriana asked, and Marcel already gave a very interesting answer. But as a major group, we also have been following the AI resolution, and like you pointed out, when we talk about interoperability in a purely technical context, it could be anything ranging from creating like a full stack product for circularity, or changing a value chain system to embed new features for, let's say, collection, ensuring the product flow across the value chain, etc. But when it comes to the multilateral governance scope, there is definitely a level of anxiety or sort of cautious approach that we observe from the member countries. And I think while the approach that we have observed is that this interoperability shouldn't be taken as a term to fear, we also know that the eventuality is for things like DPIS to eventually operate, we would need cross-border, cross-country data, and this could be anything from consumer data to land or material data that maybe some countries would be worrying about their sovereignty or their national rights. So across any of your work, do you have any, let's say, mitigation actions to kind of alleviate these anxieties from countries? And number 2 is, across any of your work, also I would like to focus as children and youth, the enabling factor, so the enabling environment could mean anything that from energy infrastructure, because DPIS or any of the AI, ML, cloud systems would increase the energy consumption substantially. Energy, broadband internet access, logistics network, any of these enabling environment has to be worked in the parallel of all your DPIS, DPP work. So across any of your work, are you also working on these aspects as well? Thank you.
Hi there. My name is Gary. And one question is about, because I am not sure does DPP include the recycle bio-based the material in the regulation? I'm not sure. So because in our project, we are doing some of the agricultural transfer to the textile. So this kind of the material is quite unique. So how can the DPP to indicate or guide the consumer to know that is from the agriculture or other bio-based material? Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate International University Network on Biodiversity, Cultural Diversity. The issue of communication, awareness, how to reach consumers, the end consumers. It is very, very important because with an economic and socio-economic point of view, the role of consumers is key in the value chain of these new tools and the real utilization of these new tools. My questions, have you considered the different optional initiatives and perspectives in reaching consumers? It means reaching society. One perspective, very strong, very deep and powerful, is education. For example, the development of curricula, dissemination of these tools as a teaching material at all the levels. And of course, I know very well that the ministries of education are not here. The Ministry of Science, not here. So there is a disconnection, huge disconnections in our field, an environmental field. We should bridge this gap, but we have instruments. One example, and I finish, and I love your comments. One example is studying at home more, exploring the policy processes that enable to introduce new perspectives and very, very effective perspectives. One is the Global Biodiversity Framework. There is a strong section now, the first time in the history of the multilateral environmental agreements, on education, development of curricula. And we are preparing the new draft of the Global Plan of Action of Education to implement the Global Biodiversity Framework. In this Global Plan of Action, we have to include the targets related to consumption and production. Well, this one is an option, not known, but I inform you, and I am fully available not only to provide information, but to work together with these perspectives. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Adam Stingemore from Standards Australia, part of the ISO delegation. Thank you for a fascinating and very informative discussion, and we very much support this work. I have a question in two parts. So verified digital credentials, of course, is a big part of this effort, and I think ultimately there will be more than one prevailing form of digital product passport. The second part of my question is, how do we make sure that the effort is coordinated and we're not duplicating effort, particularly given that there are so few experts in this area? And if you had a magic wand, what would you change about the current landscape to help us to achieve that? Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. So let me turn to the panelists. Whoever wants to start on this.
I can start with a final question. I think that the standard should be the same. Systems can be different. So that's the simple question on your answer. But standards need to be the same, otherwise we will have a mess and it will not work. And when it comes to the product passport, I don't think that the biggest benefit will be for the consumer. It will be for the producing companies. Why? Because suddenly you can see that there is a value designed for durability. The example is batteries that already are now existing. The producer of batteries sees as, oh, well, we can have a new business model. We can rent out the batteries so we have it back, because then we can sell it 2 or 3 times. So I think that is one of the biggest, of course, efforts. And then suddenly we from business will understand that we can trace where it is. And that will, of course, create new innovations. But definitely, of course, there will be a consumer benefit. The consumer can understand where to put it. But I think that the most dramatic thing is that we will design in a new way. We will use AI to make sure that we maximize this production and create circular loops. So that is my short comments on the topics, on the questions.
Thanks. Patrick?
Yeah, just to build on perhaps what we were also discussing before, but to be a bit more practical about how we tackle the development of a DPP. Is it working? Well, I sensed that people were hearing me, but maybe but anyway, so I mean, when we start looking at a new sector, what are the practical steps that we need to take, and then how do we engage with the relevant stakeholders? So each sector we look at, we start with a thorough preparatory study, mapping the value chain, identifying data that creates real value for users. And there I agree, it's not just about the end user consumer, but it's about the different actors who need to have access to this. And then assess the existing standards that can be reused. And there, I mean, I agree absolutely with what Per just said on the importance of standards. And then when we've assembled that information, then we bring in the consultation in a very sort of transparent and public way with consumers. And then to pick up some of the points in the questions, I mean, I think addressing specifically youth is very important because firstly, we tend to find that the youth are more environmentally aware and also more sort of intellectually agile in embracing new solutions, and they can then have a very strong pioneering impact in society more generally. We also need to work with international partners. We have set up what we call an eco-design forum, which is a sort of dedicated platform of stakeholders to work with us on developing these new tools. Very happy that UNEP is represented in the platform. But international cooperation is key. And I think we also need to be very aware of the need for capacity building in countries, particularly in the global south, where these issues are going to be increasingly important if producers are going to tap into global supply chains, global markets, but where the local economies need support and help in developing the necessary expertise in order to be fully engaged in these discussions. So those are my remarks in response to the question. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Patrick. Marcel?
I would like to address the first question, mainly about the controversies and the anxiety in the realm of multilateralism and the fear of transparency. And yesterday we had a panel on more the geopolitics and the shifts around the AI life cycle and the material input, and of course also the difficulties to align our goals, let's say, in the field of the energy transition and the material demands we have with the digital transformation and the massive demands for chip production, data centers, and so on and so forth. And of course, I mean, there are new challenges, and geopolitics is changing. I think it's in the room. It probably has always been in the room, specifically within the UN, of course, in a way. Yeah, what we see is, of course, an increase in what I would call bilateralism, right? I mean, more bilateral agreements, XYZ first policies, so more nationalist approach to safeguarding specific resources, provide contracts, and so on and so forth. And in a way, with regard to DPPs, DPIs, and the whole standard setting, I mean, I, of course, value very much the standard setting organizations, but to be honest, when I meet with industry stakeholders, I implicitly, if not explicitly, always hear this narrative that you have to just create the dominant way of organizing, let's say, a technical device or a standard or whatnot, and then you might be the one, the front runner, the first mover, the important player that can then dominate the field, right? Or be the example to build on. So I think I would like to answer this more with regard to the multilateralism, just try to always differentiate a little bit, at least between a very, very fundamentally justified skepticism with regards to all of these issues, and one that is probably more based in more principle, ideological roots and reasons and contexts. I mean, of course, to start with the second group, I think there are member states who are generally skeptical or afraid of increased transparency, visibility, traceability, and then it in the end doesn't matter if it's about environmental data or anything else. I think this is often seen, and I'm not sure if I have the answer for that. The first group, I think, is really about, again, this question of agency and ownership and capacities to be part of the picture, right? I mean, this was also to maybe close this, that we liked the D4CE initiative so much and took it under the codes umbrella, because initially we always said, okay, this cannot be an European Union-driven process and initiative alone, because we saw and heard from also our stakeholder consultations that are many questions, many fears, many skepticism with regard to the consequences of all these. And if you, in the environmental data domain, for example, just don't have the capacities or the experience and the means to create and use quality, interoperable, accessible data, environmental data, right? Then it's of course something you are probably skeptical about at the first hand. So I think this is very legitimate. And it is a process, as I said in the beginning, to mega transformations of our time. This involves, maybe to briefly address the education, of course, alignment from different ministerials, different silos, different issue areas, and of course, as I said in the beginning, the build-up of capacities, which includes literacy, digital literacy, sustainability literacy, aligned digital sustainability literacy in this regard. So that's very important.
I'm going to address the question about consumer awareness. So I think I was looking for an example of a digital tool or a tool similar to the kind of access that DPP, the kind of information that DPP would have, which was the energy label. So right now it's around 80% of adoption. So consumers are using this because they are accessing through QR codes, they're comparing, and they're informing themselves before purchasing a product. I think that a similar effort will be needed for DPPs. Awareness campaign, major information, and for that is what I was mentioning before, consumer advocacy groups are the bridge to get higher adoption. Now, the gentleman mentioned the global biodiversity framework, and we're actually working on that in the Consumer Information Program. We're working with the CBD Secretariat with a working group on biodiversity and the link with consumption to implement, to support governments and businesses to implement Target 15 and 16 that call for sustainable production and consumption under this global framework. So everyone who wants to work on this aspect, they're invited to participate in our program. And lastly, also in the spirit of harmonizing efforts, I won't stand back into saying that the end users, the consumers, will define how successful this initiative is, so that DPP does not end up being just an additional information that is discarded, that is just extra information as some aspects of product information sometimes are. We're asking for the minimum that we require, as long as it also doesn't add into unaffordable solutions. I mean, this transparency, consumer information itself shouldn't represent higher cost for consumers. That's what we would like to have with the DPPs as well.
Thank you. I see Pars want to add something.
Yes, I'd like to do some commercial for one of our reports. The International Chamber of Commerce has done a report about digitalization for people, planet, and prosperity. And here you have, I think it's 15 different case studies of different companies that develop innovation based on more digital solutions, and how important it is to make sure that we are solving the triple planetary crisis. So if you go to our homepage, you can download the report and get inspired from these different business cases.
Thank you for the advertisement. So allow me to add my 2 cents also. Well, thank you for addressing the questions. And I just want to add to the other comment that you were saying, the importance of having a common understanding is key. So as Reina said, we have been doing regional consultations. And really one of the first concerns that has emerged there is the fear first for seeing digital product passport as a trade barrier, or competitiveness, or also, I don't know, threatening intellectual property. So I think that's also, I just wanted to add there. I like the question also on the enabling conditions. You responded very well, and I think in the enabling conditions, it's also important to look at the technologies, and that's why we are not only promoting digital broad passport, it could be other technology, blockchain, or you name it. So that is looking at technologies, energy, education as well, and the regulation policies are key. And the last one to Adam on the ISO. Of course, as we mentioned in the introduction and Reina highlighted, we want to have an open conversation. That's why we're working not only with the 4 institutions that are here in this panel, but we have had some conversation with ISO. We're working with the UNECE so that we don't duplicate. And what is really good is that we have had also multi-stakeholder dialogues in different regions. Again, not to duplicate and really bring more synergies in that. So with this, please join me to thank our excellent panelists with a round of applause. And before I let you go, and I invite my colleague Reina to give the closing remarks. Reina, I want to invite you just to have a group photo, because I know they will disappear. And I just also want to highlight, and I forgot Reina, I want to appreciate the excellent cooperation with ITU and Reina, who has been since the beginning in this. But come for a photo, please.
I close and then we do the picture. Very good. So then they don't escape. So thank you so much to all of you. I know that you are busy and you have other schedule, but just very quick that we want you to leave this room and you take home. The importance of involving every stakeholder in the discussion, and you can see in the panel we have a diverse actors that take part of the digital product information system. The importance of collaboration. We are not doing this alone. We are doing this with other standards development organizations, with other UN agencies, with consumer, and with the private sector as well. Also, we would like, if you are willing to take part of the regional consultation, please join us, let us know. As well, universities are welcome to join us, and the importance of capacity building. So that's what we want you to leave this session today, join the Digital for Circular Economy initiative. Be in touch with us, and thank you so much for being a great audience. Thank you. I'm gonna jump.
There, so that we have the two women, maybe here in between. Come with Marcel, yes.
Where?
Yes. So this one, please. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us and great support. We're working very closely.
Thank you so much.
We have the minister from the DRC. I want to speak for somebody. She's the minister for new climate economy. She's very much interested in this topic. Unfortunately, we cannot be late. She would like to join the initiative.
You want to join?